This is the story of Pablo Escobar, a man who rose from poverty, controlled the global cocaine trade, and challenged an entire nation until everything collapsed. Pablo Emilio Escobar Gaviria was born on December 1, 1949, in Rio Negro, Colombia, and raised in Medellin. His family lived a simple life with no luxury, no influence, and no safety net. But even as a child, Pablo hated one thing more than anything else: being powerless. Friends later said he was quiet, observant, and unusually bold. He didn't talk about dreams. He talked about outcomes. As a teenager, Pablo realized something early. Hard work was slow, but crime was fast. He started small, selling fake diplomas, smuggling cigarettes, and stealing cars. It wasn't about survival, it was about control. By his early 20s, Pablo wasn't afraid of breaking the law anymore. He was testing how far he could go. In the early 1970s, cocaine was quietly becoming America's favorite secret. It wasn't yet seen as dangerous. It was expensive, trendy, and associated with wealth. Miami became the gateway. When Pablo learned how much Americans were willing to pay for cocaine, everything changed. At first, he worked as a transporter, helping move shipments for others. But Pablo hated being second in command. He watched, he learned, and he waited. Then he made his move. Instead of working for traffickers, he built his own pipeline: production, transportation, and distribution, cutting out the middlemen. That decision gave birth to the Medellin cartel. By the late 1970s and early 1980s, Escobar's operation exploded. Cocaine flowed into the United States by the ton. Private planes landed daily. Cash piled up faster than it could be counted. At his peak, Escobar was making tens of millions of dollars every single day. So much money that he buried it in fields, stuffed it inside walls, and reportedly lost millions to rats and mold. Forbes listed him among the richest people in the world while he was actively committing mass murder. But Escobar wasn't reckless. He understood something most criminals didn't. Money alone doesn't protect you. Fear does. But before fear became his primary weapon, Escobar mastered something even more powerful: logistics. His operation wasn't just violent. It was organized like a corporation. There were pilots, chemists, accountants, security teams, transport coordinators, and distributors. Entire airstrips were built in remote jungle areas. Small planes would fly low over the Caribbean, avoiding radar. The demand in the United States fueled everything. Nightclubs in Miami, Los Angeles, and New York were becoming symbols of excess. Cocaine was seen as glamorous, tied to wealth, status, and power. Wall Street traders, celebrities, party scenes — the appetite seemed endless. And Escobar understood supply and demand better than most legitimate businessmen. He wasn't just selling a product. He was feeding an addiction that was exploding across borders. The profits allowed him to buy influence on a scale few criminals had ever achieved. Entire police units were compromised. Customs officials were paid off. Politicians looked the other way. When bribery failed, intimidation followed. When intimidation failed, violence made the final statement. The system wasn't random. It was calculated. Every decision served expansion. Every threat served stability. Escobar also invested heavily in loyalty. Those who worked for him were often paid far above normal wages. Families of fallen associates were supported financially. That created a deep bond within the cartel. For many young men in Medellin, joining his operation meant instant wealth compared to limited legal opportunities. Poverty made recruitment easy. Money made loyalty stronger. Fear made betrayal rare. But this growth came at a cost. As the cocaine trade expanded, so did addiction, violence, and instability in both Colombia and the United States. Cartel wars intensified. Competition sharpened. The business that once operated quietly in the shadows became impossible to ignore. Law enforcement agencies in multiple countries began coordinating. The spotlight was growing brighter. And with every headline, Escobar's legend grew, not just as a trafficker, but as a symbol of unchecked power. Escobar created a system so simple it was terrifying. Plata o plomo. Silver or lead. Take the bribe or take the bullet. Judges were assassinated. Police officers were executed. Journalists were silenced. Sometimes the threat alone was enough. Sometimes the violence was public, meant to send a message. Colombia entered a period of fear unlike anything it had ever known. But here's what made Escobar even more dangerous. While the government failed Medellin's poorest neighborhoods, Escobar filled the gap. He built thousands of homes, soccer fields, schools, and clinics. To many families, Pablo Escobar was the first man who ever helped them. Children played on fields he paid for. Parents lived in houses he built. In those communities, Pablo wasn't a criminal. He was a protector. People warned him when police were coming. Some hid him. Some died for him. Escobar had something money couldn't easily buy: love. But Escobar didn't just want power in the shadows. He wanted legitimacy. In the early 1980s, he entered politics and won a seat in Colombia's Congress. A drug trafficker now sat inside the government. For a brief moment, it worked, until journalists exposed his criminal empire. Escobar was humiliated publicly, and that humiliation changed him. From that moment on, he stopped pretending. When Colombia approved extradition to the United States, Escobar panicked. An American prison meant isolation, no bribes, and no control. So he declared war. Car bombings shook cities. Politicians were assassinated, judges were hunted. A commercial airplane was destroyed in midair, killing innocent civilians. Escobar wanted the government to understand one thing: if he went down, the country would burn with him. In 1991, the Colombian government made a desperate deal. Escobar would surrender, on his terms. He built his own prison called La Catedral. It wasn't a prison, it was a fortress. Luxury rooms, a bar, a soccer field, and guards loyal to him. From inside, Escobar continued running his empire. When the government tried to move him to a real prison in 1992, he escaped. The final hunt began. What made this period even more intense was the rise of enemies from all sides. Rival cartels saw weakness. Paramilitary groups formed alliances. A shadowy organization known as Los Pepes began targeting Escobar's associates, destroying properties and eliminating anyone connected to him. For the first time in years, fear was no longer flowing in just one direction. It was coming back at him. His network, once untouchable, began to crumble under pressure from both the government and his rivals. The myth of invincibility started to fade. As the manhunt tightened, Escobar's life shrank dramatically. He could no longer stay in one place for long. He moved constantly, sleeping in safe houses, abandoned buildings, and borrowed apartments. Phone calls to his family became his biggest weakness. Each call risked detection, but he couldn't resist hearing their voices. The empire that once generated millions per day had turned into a survival game measured hour by hour. By the early 1990s, Escobar was alone. His allies were dead. His money couldn't save him. His support was fading. Colombian forces, backed by U.S. intelligence, tracked his phone calls and movements. Safe houses disappeared. Loyalty vanished. Escobar went from king to fugitive. On December 2, 1993, one day after his 44th birthday, authorities found him in Medellin. He ran across rooftops. Gunshots echoed. And just like that, it was over. Pablo Escobar was dead. Thousands of people died because of one man's ambition. Colombia was scarred for generations. Some still romanticize him. Others remember only the blood, but his story proves something important. Power without limits always destroys itself.